Hello! Hello!
Hello, hello.
Hello, OAC.
We are ready to talk, and we have the beverages with which to do it. We have our water.
Depending on the topic.
To stay hydrated.
Water.
And we have tea to stay awake with our Blue Jay mugs.
Cheers.
Chin chin. And when it gets to the really difficult part of the conversation, we will, of course, revert to wine.
Cheers!
So please, cuddle up, grab a glass, because it's going to be a fabulous evening.
Okay, one quick swig.
One swig.
Okay.
Oh, hey, guys.
Cleansing breath. Hi. My name is Karen Boite, and I am a member of the Ontario Autism Coalition, and this is
an executive member. You're
an executive
senior
member.
Director.
I'm a very important person.
You are.
So
You
important.
are. But I outrank you.
You do outrank me. And you should all be very, very, very pleased about that.
Yes.
We do periodic Facebook Lives, and we're just going to dance. We're just going to jump in. We see there are already comments. Hello, everybody. Laura and I want to talk about what is happening with the Ontario Autism Coalition. We have 3 areas of conversation that we want to discuss. The first will be school exclusions. The second will be the Ontario Autism Program, and we know that many of you are anxious to hear news about that. And the third is a discussion about lobbying, about talking to your local representatives, your MPPs, your school boards, your principals, all that sort of thing. So we have a lot to unpack.
Yep, we do.
And I want to start by saying hi. And this is...
I'm Laura Kirby-McIntosh.
Now,
I'm your president.
I usually let Laura introduce herself, but today I'm going to say a couple of things about Laura for those of you who don't know her. The Ontario Autism Coalition is a group of parents, autistic self-advocates, therapists, practitioners, and friends. We speak truth to power, and we do the best that we can in trying to do that. We have been on the planet for about 14 years, 15 years now.
Since 2005.
And Laura has been with the OAC since the beginning. I am a relatively newcomer. Laura Kirby-McIntosh is a mother of 2 children on the spectrum. She is a high school teacher who has a passion for the law and civics. Thank God. She is also a primo speaker, lobbyist, and I met Laura when the Ontario provincial government tried to cut the autism support funding for children over the age of 5. And at that time, my son was over the age of 5 and was just starting out in a program with a direct funded provider. And
sorry,
like
my dog is chasing his tail.
is chasing his tail. Like many parents at that time, I lost my mind. I was lost. I was confused. I felt betrayed. I didn't know what to do. And I know there are thousands of parents who were like me. And suddenly in the Facebook ether, I read a notification from this group called the Ontario Autism Coalition saying that they were going to hold a meeting discussing these cuts. And at this meeting, full of parents who were shocked, bereaved, traumatized, in fact. I think it's really safe to say traumatized by the fact that their child was about to lose service or never even start, even though they had been waiting 2+ years for service to start. These people, this lady, stood up and told the story of a fight that they had with the McGuinty government over a cut to the program for children 6 years of age and older, and the story of how they won that fight and the kinds of protests, the kind of organizing that they did. And they were a small group of about 12 people.
Where our core founding group was 5.
5 people. Hearing their stories and hearing what they went through, which was pretty excruciating, gave me the hope and the fight that I needed to continue on. this battle. And as a result, hundreds of us visited our MPPs, hundreds of us sat down and poured our hearts out. We had to expose our souls. We had to expose our tender underbellies in order to save the funding for these programs. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult. People were upset. People were fighting amongst themselves, but we won.
We did.
Okay, so that's the short version. So I met this lady, and it was her guidance, her strength, and how she led by example that gave me the ability to pitch in. And I could barely think at that point. I was so upset. And I know that so many others were in the same boat. So here we are today at the cusp of what we think the provincial government may do, which is they're going to start making announcements. Mm-hmm. And the last time we had a Facebook Live, which was just after the election, you said to us, can you remember?
No.
I'll tell you what she said. I'll tell you what she said.
I said many things.
You said many things.
Yeah.
But one of the things you said was, we don't know what's coming up. We don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people are guessing, and there are rumors all the time. Mm-hmm. And still, we don't quite know.
Yeah. And we'll get to that in a little bit. I kind of want to talk a little bit about what we did last week with exclusions, and then get into the OAP, and then start talking strategy going
So we'll
forward.
get to the OAP, but I know a lot of people are watching saying, what's the breaking news? What's happening? We don't have breaking news. We certainly are aware of plenty of rumors, as you all are, but we don't have breaking news, but we do want to talk about what we have done in terms of the OAP. But first, the big news last week were school exclusions, and this amazing story that the generous Lisa Kahn spearheaded and was willing to share a part of her life with the Globe and Mail to highlight school exclusions and expulsion and a number of other issues. If you haven't had a chance to read that article, it's fantastic.
I've just posted it for you there. It's called Educating Grayson.
Yeah. Okay, so quickly, Laura, what is a school exclusion?
So a school exclusion is a use of a rather obscure section of the Education Act. It's not a suspension or an expulsion. It was originally a section of the Act that was used to design to deter intruders. Yeah. And for a little bit in the litigation, there was some confusion about whether or not it could be, in fact, used against pupils of the school. With some court decisions, it was determined that yes, it could. And so what we found in our survey last year, what People for Education have found in their survey, is that both from our end, surveying parents, and P4E surveying principals, we knew that this was a tool that principals were using with increasing and alarming frequency, particularly as a tool to deal with kids with disabilities who are hard to serve. The difficulty, of course, is that it flies in the face of the right of every student to an education. We've seen it happening in formal and informal ways, where sometimes parents are called into a meeting and they receive a letter and it says this is the section of the Act, and this is the process. In the case of what happened to my son back in 2010, 2011, there was no letter. We were just told verbally. We were never told that we had a right to appeal the process. And he was out of school for 6 months. Yeah. So what an exclusion does is it identifies the child with the disability as the problem, and it gives the principal a tool to remove the problem and not to solve the underlying issues. And so we obviously take exception to that, and we've been calling on the government to end that practice, in effect, to ban it.
Yeah. We know you've been very public, and recently you've divulged more about your son's exclusion. And for those of you who haven't had a chance, we have posted 4 of the radio interviews that you did on the topic, and where Laura goes through a play-by-play of what her experience was like and what the effect of an exclusion can have on so many families. We have made a decision to focus on this issue for a very good reason.
I'm sorry, I have to go deal with the dog.
He's got to deal with
Do you hear
the
the
dog.
grunting in the background, folks?
The
That's
dog has to go outside?
No, he wants to play with the cat.
Oh.
That noise that you hear, just for comic entertainment. Shh, shh, listen, it's called his piggy noises.
Sorry, everyone.
I'm going to take the dog to another room. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Basil, come.
Come on, Basil. Apologies, everyone. So I'm going to get Laura to address why it is that we had decided to highlight exclusion as a topic in the press and something to share with our membership, because exclusion itself is not something that affects a lot of people. However, the ripple effect of this discussion could be very valuable for many, many other children. And that's what I'm trying to get at with you. So why exclusion? Why have we highlighted this particular kind of small issue in terms of how many people are actually excluded from school, how many children are actually excluded from school?
Certainly you can't argue that it's a small number of kids that are affected, but the impact on those kids and on their families is anything but small.
Yeah.
And again, read the article by Caroline Alfonso, and you'll see the impact that it's had on families like Lisa, who's joining us here in the live. You know, to try to explain to your child, no, you can't go to school. No, I don't know when you're going to be allowed to go to school. To try to insulate them from those feelings that it's somehow their fault.
Yeah.
I mean, the main issue the main reason we're tackling this issue is that the practice is on a variety of levels a violation of human rights, a violation of potentially a number of legal documents that protect our children from these types of things, but also because it unlocks a bunch of issues. If you're going to talk about exclusion, sooner or later you have to also talk about the lack of meaningful supports for our kids in classrooms. You have to talk about the lack of EAs. You have to talk about the lack of training. Now, my friend David Lepofsky at the AODA Alliance would say those issues are side issues. Really, this is about rights. And it is untenable that there is a section of the Education Act that allows principals to treat children with disabilities different from those who don't have disabilities. And it's unimaginable that our kids are being denied access to an education. So we're trying to provoke that conversation. We did a briefing to Sam Oosterhoff, who's the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Education, Lisa Thompson. And I mean, when we went in, he had never heard of exclusions. Most people haven't. I hadn't heard of it as an educator until it happened to my son.
You were faced with it, with one. Yeah.
You know, and I had a lot of questions, but you know, for all the privilege that I had, I was, I think, less than optimally effective in terms of fighting it.
Yeah.
Looking back, we probably should have sued the daylights out of the school board. Or at least challenged it in a human rights case. So increasingly, we're recommending to our members that they do that. We're pointing them in the direction of organizations like Arch Disability Law, or encouraging them to file directly with the Human Rights Tribunal to try to send a message to principals, to school boards, and to Ministry of Education officials that you can't keep doing this and saying, oh, gee, we don't have enough resources to support the kids, so we'll just push the difficult kids out. That's not a solution, and it's not legal.
Yeah. And there's no data kept.
No, and that's something that we're working on. We're trying to get some data on it. The first bits we got from our education survey last year, we'll repeat that. Arch Disability Law has some data as well. But one of the things that we've asked the Ministry of Education to do is to request that school boards track data. And another thing is that there's two different types of exclusion, and I'd like to see data on both types. So there's the hard exclusion, where the child is told you can't come to school at all during the day.
That was your experience?
Yes.
Okay.
But we also experienced, as many of you watching have experienced, soft exclusions, where we were told to bring our child in late in the day or pick him up early, or we'd get a call in the middle of the day, he's had a meltdown, please come and take him home.
Right.
Or
come for an hour a day with no plan in place to extend those hours. You know.
Yeah. Sil is asking, how do the school boards justify exclusions? The difficulty is no one's really asking them to. And so a ministry directive saying, we want to know how often it's happening. And we want to include things like when the class goes out on a field trip and your child is told, sorry, we don't have an EA available that day, or we just, from a safety concern, and this is how usually they couch it, we just don't think that we can guarantee that your son will be safe. So if you want to come with him and you want to take on that legal liability, then he can go. But otherwise he can't go. And it's best for him if you either keep him at home or you keep him at the school, and we'll look after him in the office. And I mean, the impact on that on children is just devastating. You know, they watch their kids get on the bus and go somewhere.
How come
fun.
I'm not going to?
And the question has to be, why aren't you choosing a place that's accessible, or why aren't you making better arrangements to make sure that every kid has the support that they need to participate fully in the trip? Yeah. And so. Yeah, there's just far too much of it going on. So we're hoping to force some data collection, and then data we hope will drive policy.
And that Globe article made a big splash. I'm not going to mention the child or the mom involved. You can read the story. We are very grateful to this mother for opening up, these parents for opening up their lives and sharing their story. It does take courageous people to shed a light on a practice like this. So many folks become easily intimidated. And I think that I'm going to blow a little smoke up your butt here. Because we have you, and you had enough distance between that experience, I think it enabled you to articulate very well what it is like for a family to go through this experience and accentuate the story that was in the Globe. And again, if you haven't had a chance to listen to Laura's interviews, please do. We don't want to take this whole Facebook Live to talk about that. But that is the kind of work that this is required. These exclusions affect real people, real families. Parents have to leave work, leave their jobs, in some cases lose their jobs. And I alluded to the trauma that I'm free to say I experienced when the age 5 cutoff, look at me, I can barely get the words out, happened. I can only imagine what Laura went through those 6 months when her son was out of school. So the fact that you have some distance and the fact that you are a teacher and the fact that you've seen this before with other families gave you a very unique perspective. So it is a strategic move on our point to highlight this, and in an attempt to say, look, you know, if there are supports, this wouldn't happen. We don't want to throw anybody under the bus in terms of principals, teachers. That's not what the OAC is about. And I want to make 2 observations in response to that. One is that this is sort of an interesting moment to talk about activism. For those parents out there that are considering taking legal action against a school board, or taking any kind of legal action ever on behalf of their child, I do want to warn you, it is all consuming. And you can do activism in sort of the general sense. You can be an autism activist, or you can be involved in litigation. But it is my strong belief that you cannot do both. Because I mean, I've walked alongside parents who have gone through the litigation battle, and it is intensely emotional
incredibly personal. And I have nothing but the greatest respect for those who do it. Someday, if we ever get to the top of the mountain, whether we get there through litigation or political advocacy, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And so we need to support those who are involved in litigation. We need to donate to their legal, GoFundMe campaigns, and we need to support them emotionally. But activism is a different path, and it's hard to do both well. All right, so I see some people saying let's move on to talking about the OAP. Before we do, I just want to let viewers know we're not done with this issue. The OAP definitely may come up and demand more of our attention, but we're not going to let this go. And we're collaborating with some other organizations that I can't identify publicly yet without their consent. But a big thing that the OAC has done in the last year is really reached out to other organizations that can stand along with us. Yeah. And you may see us organizing events later.
Quickly, before we move on to the OAP, can you tell us about we have historically had a difficult time reaching ministers of education in previous administrations and this one. Yeah. That's a hard nut to crack. Has there been any movement as a result of that article in terms of getting a meeting with Lisa MacLeod, who is the Minister of Education?
No, she's...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Lisa Thompson.
Lisa Thompson. Sorry, I'm mixing up my Lisas.
There's a lot of good Lisas out there.
A lot of great Lisas. Yeah. Lisa Thompson. Has there been any headway in making contact with the minister's office and the minister herself?
No, Sam Oosterhoff has been friendly.
And Sam Oosterhoff is?
He's the parliamentary assistant, aka minister in training, to the Minister of Education, Lisa Thompson. So basically, he's learning on the job. He hasn't got any cabinet experience, but he's learning on the job. He's following her. Sometimes he'll go to events that she can't attend, and sometimes he'll help with special projects at her instruction. So we had a great meeting with him and his staff. We've been able to follow up with phone calls to sort of ask questions about certain things. We were hearing rumors at one point that the Autism classroom project, the pilot project, had stopped running. We were able to confirm, no, it is still up and running, so that was important. But in terms of contact from the minister, no, there's been nothing. I feel generally that it's harder to get the attention of a minister of education than it is the Minister of Children and Youth or Children and Community and Social Services now. It's a big ministry. Every time I walk in the building, I just kind of scan up, and it's like the building gets taller every time. And I think to myself, like, I must be out of my mind. Who am I taking on the education system? Like, come on.
We are.
I wrote we wrote a report, and we've had some lovely meetings, but there's literally hundreds of people thousands of people who are in this system, and we're punching way above our weight on this issue. But I think we still have to try.
Yeah. And so I asked that question also to highlight how slow progress will be on that front.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we're on it.
Yep.
We're on it. It's going to be a long slog, everybody.
This was the tea part of the conversation.
Yeah, that was the tea part. So are we moving on to wine?
Yeah, we really are.
Okay. So Ontario Autism Program.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I think I can say clearly we really don't know still.
No.
We're waiting for an announcement. It seems all of our spidey senses and
our little
instincts
birds.
And our little birds in the community are hinting that an announcement is coming. Yeah. We don't know what that's going to be, and it would not be ethical for us to even guess, or fair.
Just to be clear to our members, if we had insider information from the government and we were asked to keep that information confidential, it's a process called, it's often referred to as being embargoed. So the previous government, for instance, would share a proposal with us and say, this is under the cone of silence, you are embargoed. And basically, if you break an embargo, the government will never work with you and will never trust you again.
Yeah.
And so I'm used to that kind of thing. I want to be completely upfront right now. We are not under any embargo because we have no information officially from the government.
Yeah.
I can tell you tonight that we have a meeting with the Chief of Staff to Lisa McLeod, Tim Porter, and the Senior Policy Advisor in the Minister's Office on the autism file. That isn't until January 28th, but it's, you know, it's a positive sign. I had tweeted and written earlier about asking for a letter or asking for a meeting and hadn't gotten anywhere. And then just on a lark last week decided, you know what, I'm going to write them again.
Try one more time.
I'm going to try one more time, send a letter, and I got a response back in an hour.
Yeah.
So that's to their credit. So we are going in for a meeting. My guess is that, you know, whatever we're told in that meeting will be embargoed. But I just want to be clear that anything that I'm about to say tonight is entirely based on rumors. And most of it is rumors that I'm hearing from you, the members. I don't have any insight into what's actually coming. All I can tell you is that I'm hearing rumors about what's being considered.
Right. So how do we address this? How do we talk about this, gang?
Well, I think one thing that I can share with you guys is what we asked for when we went in back in August. We were able to get a meeting with a variety of people. I won't name them all, but a couple of MPPs and senior staffers in the minister's office. And we went in and we did a briefing on the OAP. And that briefing note should be posted up on our website soon. I believe you can find it in the files section in our Facebook page.
Yes, it should be there.
And so in that, we sort of told them who we are. We told them what the numbers were. We talked about their, you know, the big priority, of course, is reducing the wait list. The danger is, of course, there's a lot of really bad ways to reduce a wait list. So we talked about what the Liberals did, what they left unfinished, and then we left them with a list of things not to do. And these were sort of our deal breakers. We were basically trying to send a message to them that if you do any of the following things, we will not support it.
Yeah. And behind the scenes, the executive met earlier this week or last week to discuss that again. What are the deal breakers for us, for the OAC?
Okay, so we've got questions coming in fast and furious. So yes, it's great that we have a meeting. The rumors are coming in a variety of forms.
Okay.
So one rumor is that they're looking at going to a model similar to what they have in British Columbia. The BC model is a direct funding model, so that part is good.
Yep.
But it's a flat rate model, and that part we don't like. What they do is they give $20,000 to any child under 6.
This is what BC are doing. BC. We're not saying that the provincial government is just throwing out numbers like that.
No, but in BC they give 20 grand if your child is under 6. You get 6 grand if your child is over 6, and that's it. And it's regardless of severity.
For the year?
I think so. I think so for the year. The danger here, and we said in our briefing note, don't do that. I think our first thing was, don't even think of doing an age cutoff, because like we fought that very quickly. We talked about the need to build capacity and have more therapists and so on. I think we have the government's ear on the conflict of interest, finally. Yes. The whole issue of conflict of interest between the regionals and the private providers.
Can you expound on that a little bit? Why do we feel so strongly about a conflict of interest? Or
before I do, let me just see if there's any viewers that don't know what we're talking about here, because we did a press conference on it.
Yes,
I think our members are fairly clear about the money management of the regional programs and private providers.
Yes.
So I think they've heard us on that.
Okay.
But the question is what they're going to do with, Lisa, you're right, $6,000 would hardly cover a month of ABA. So here's the danger. If you want to, okay, let me back up. First of all, the wait list right now, just to put it in perspective, is close to 30,000. That's what we're hearing. So, I mean, it's massive. And to a certain extent, we're victims of our own success because we fought down the age cutoff. The government came back with more than we had ever dreamed of and had said, we're going to extend services up to kids that are 18. So a whole bunch of kids came into the line on the wait list that hadn't been there before.
That's right.
And it's slowed to a halt. And I hear you guys about how long you've been waiting.
We're seeing some, wow!
Yeah, 30,000.
So maybe to recap, so
take that in.
There was an age, they tried to impose an age 5 cutoff, which included all children over the age of 5 and all children who would turn 5 when their number came up from service. Then we had a big fight. And we had some unprecedented wins, one of which is that children will be covered from the age of 18 up to the age of 18, that a CIC, a clinician in charge, would be the person to determine the number of hours.
And that's a really important point.
It's a very important point.
Clinical oversight.
Clinical oversight, the clinician in charge, the CIC, would be the person to determine the level of service. So we had kids who had been through ABA, who were turning around and trying to come back in.
Or kids who had never gotten ABA, who were finally accessing it for the first time.
Which was a very large number of children. And we, for various reasons, if you had a dual diagnosis, if you had Down syndrome and autism, you were not eligible to the program. If you were blind and you had autism, you were not ... So lots of reasons. If you were too severe, if you were not severe enough, and
if you were doing too well in your therapy.
That's right. If you were doing great, then okay, we're done with you. And oh boy, it's complicated. And so there were kids coming back, kids who had never received service. And then there was a very large group of children who were receiving very short, tiny little blocks of what they referred to as the ABA program. And then there were kids who were in the intensive program. So you have all of these different children feeding in after we won this big battle. So here we are today, and we feel for the provincial government. They have an awful lot of children to manage. So what the previous administration was able to do was able to squeeze everybody back onto one highway, and in theory, each child would be given, once their number came up, would be given what they needed, you know. And this is the biggest part of our argument. This is all about need. It's not really a fight about money or this much money or that much money. It's about need, right? Okay, so
we got some good wins there, right?
Yeah.
I think we finally convinced all of the parties that age-based services are not on. We impressed upon them the importance of having the decision about how much therapy a child gets. That has to be made by an independent clinician and not a staffer at the regional program, because that used to be a thing. So there's some good movement there, and I think we may even have the government's ear on the need for regulation of ABA therapists. Here's where I think, I hear you, Maria. You're still giving ABA service blocks. And of course, some of you are hearing that you can't even find out where your child is on the wait list. It feels like the money has stopped flowing. So one of our directors, for instance, Chrissy, posted a survey asking people, has anybody on DFO actually got a new funding block? It seems like everybody in the ministry is being told, don't do anything until this announcement is coming. But if the government decides to go with a system where we give a large amount to kids under one age and a smaller amount to kids over a certain age, here's the problem. That looks like equality, right? Everybody gets the same amount, no matter what. That's got to be fair. And you best believe Doug Ford is going to go out there and say to people, but we're being totally fair. We're going to reduce the wait list. We're going to give everybody the same amount, and we're going to drop the wait list by this amount. These are our projections. And it's going to be really hard for Joe Public to go, well, that doesn't sound right. They're going to listen to it and go, but that sounds amazing. This is the game, though, of pitting parent against parent, right? If you take my daughter, who's 16, who doesn't need intensive ABA, if the government gives me $6,000, I mean, that's lovely. but she doesn't need it. What about the 16-year-old who's nonverbal, in a helmet, who's self-injurious? That kid needs a hell of a lot more than $6,000. So equity is the idea of giving people what they need. And the fear here is that any sort of flat fee system is going to go against all of the research in terms of what it says about, diagnosing the autism and prescribing, if you can think of it this way, a dose of ABA therapy to kids depending on their needs, recognizing that those needs will come and go. There's lots of good programs out there. Some of them, I dare say, involve blocks of service that can be effective for kids that are at one end of the spectrum. I don't like the terms high functioning or low functioning. But there are some kids who can get one round of intervention and then they don't need anything for quite a while. They may come back when they hit puberty, but we need a system that is actually going to serve the kids that are severely affected. And that's my fear, is that there's going to be this battle pitched between parents who are like, oh my God, $6,000 a year? That'd be amazing because I've been sitting on a wait list. And
we're not saying it's $6,000 a year,
by the way. We don't even know. But
let's take that hypothetically. A hypothetical, say if we were to adopt the model that they have in BC. British Columbia.
Yep. So, if you've got nothing for 2 years and your kid is mildly affected, you might be tempted to take that $6,000 and run. But the danger is that if we roll over and accept that system, we're ignoring the kids that are more severely affected, who are not going to get anything close to what they clinically require.
And the other thing too is that will mean that the recommendations of a clinician are irrelevant.
And that goes against, I don't know, every bit of scientific research out there. So it's, is it an effective way to manage a wait list and manage a budget? Maybe. But we have to let them know that we're not going to let them divide us, and that what we're fighting for here is equity. What I think I want to try to convince the government to do when we go into the meeting, and I haven't even told you this yet, but it's just ruminating in my head, is to say, okay, look, if you're going to end the conflict of interest and you're going to introduce regulation, stop there. Just do that for a year. And let's find out how much money you save by ending the conflict of interest. And invest all of that into clearing the wait list. But please hold on. Don't roll the clock back 20 years. What do you guys think of that as an ask? Give me some feedback on that, because I think, I'll tell you how this works, frankly, is that when you go in for a meeting with the government and they're about to make an announcement and you're a stakeholder group, they'll tell you a few things and then they'll ask for an endorsement. And they'll say, can you give us a quote to put on our press release? And we got this all the time from the Liberals. And we're like, we're not giving you a quote until you do this and this and this and this. So if they're going to ask us for a quote, if, let's best case scenario.
I need wine.
I know.
I need wine.
Cheers. Cheers. Jesus, I can't believe we're still doing this.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Picture me with my protest sign that says, I can't believe I'm still protesting this shit.
Boy.
But Dougie said we're not going to have to protest. So
That's what he said.
Maybe we're not going to have to do it.
Okay.
Dougie, if you're listening, please, I really don't want to protest anymore. I'm so tired. But if they come forward and say, we're ending the conflict of interest and we're going to introduce regulation, I think my response is to tell them, okay, stop there. Just that be the announcement.
Let's see how much money you will save.
Because nobody's done the calculations. I mean, by the way, ending the conflict of interest comes with a short-term expense, which is called the cost of, I guess, breaking a bunch of contracts with the regional programs. So there's going to be some kind of buyout involved. But when you think of what would be saved in administration just from taking control of the funding away from the regionals and moving it back to the Ministry of Education, there will be a massive cost savings there. We don't advocate, and I don't think we ever will, for the complete destruction of the regional programs.
No,
because we
absolutely
recognize
not.
that there are many for whom DSO works,
Yep.
particularly in more remote and northern
Yep.
communities.
Yep.
I just want those DSOs to be service providers like everybody else.
Like everybody else. We're on record over that many times, and the ask is simply, if you are going to be a provider, you cannot also be the banker.
Yeah.
That we want a separate organization. We want the government to control the funds and not a contracted provider.
Yeah.
That's what we mean by conflict of interest. You can't be banker and doctor at the same time, or physician or therapist, clinician.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't know.
We don't.
We do know that waiting lists seem to be extended for those who are receiving some information from their regional providers. We know that people have been told you've got 24 months to wait, and suddenly it's 33 months, or suddenly it's we can't tell you how long you're waiting. We can surmise why that is, but we don't know for sure. We wish we did. I know Laura and I both know what it feels like to wait years for service. It is a terrible, terrible feeling, and it feels like an eternity. And those of you who are very concerned and very upset by this, we are certainly not telling you not to be. It's really hard to wait. And it's easy to, maybe we should mention, when we were in the fight for the H5 cutoff, something called 810, 8K, 10K was invented. Kind of maybe sort of along the lines of what we're talking about in BC.
Take this and be quiet.
Take this and be quiet.
But the difference is it was installments. It wasn't a flat rate for the year.
But it was originally intended to be a one-time payment. And then those payments were renewed. Because I think the provincial government realized that they were in
give it to them and take it away.
You can't give it and take it away. So that was another confusion that had to be untangled, and eventually it was. People were getting a fair amount, and then suddenly getting less, and that was confusing. And what's going on? And but it was payoff money. That's really what that was.
And it meant that a cohort of kids, and if I recall correctly, most of the kids that got that funding were the ones that had initially been kicked out.
That's right.
And so it was a way.
That's right. The kids who would have turned 5, who would have turned 5 that were not yet in service, or just, if you had a service contract, then you were just in the old IBI program until it was all folded into the OAP.
But the big thing was sort of the folding into the folding together of all of the wait lists, because under the old system we had intensive therapy, or IBI, we had blocks of therapy called ABA, and then we also had this stream of the 810K families. That was supposed to all collapse, and we were supposed to have one wait list as of a year ago. And of course what we're hearing is that the regionals are still keeping one list for the DSO, one for DFO, and now something called a transition list, where if you try to leave DSO and transition over to DFO, they put you on a new list. And so, I mean, that just
doesn't sound like one list to me, Laura.
It does not sound like one list to me at all. And it further, enhances why we can't let the regionals have control over the money. So let me just go back over some of the comments. Way back up here, somebody put in a graphic. Darcy, thank you so much for this, because I wanted to do it as well. But it's a graphic that visually explains the difference between equality and equity. And it's a bunch of boys looking over a fence at a baseball game. So take a look at that if you want a really simple visual way to explain, perhaps to an MPP that you might be lobbying, she said, segueing into the next segment. That's a really great one.
She's a pro.
Darcy, my challenge to you is go and find the one that has 3 panels, where the 3rd panel is the removal of barriers, where there is simply no fence, and post that one as well, because I really like it. And then coming back down the comments, Jessica, glad to hear that you got to go to the roundtable. Oh, delighted to hear that Christine Elliott was there and wrote down everything parents were saying. That's awesome. So yes, that's another thing that we need to address, is that the government is, individual MPPs are holding roundtables right now, listening to parents. And I think that's very positive.
Yeah.
I think anytime the government wants to listen, we go and we share our stories.
Yeah.
And our stories right now involve sitting on wait lists and confusion with what the heck the regionals are doing, and frustration with the way the changes that the Liberals made to the OAP haven't really resolved everything. So it's good that they're listening. What I wonder about is to what extent they've already decided what they're going to do. But if you have an opportunity to go to one of those roundtable discussions, go. And make sure that you tell them, what are the changes that you'd like to see? What are the things that you're afraid of? Because I think that's really valuable input.
And also, if you have a chance to watch the press conference that we posted about the wait lists
and the conflict of interest,
and the conflict of interest, and the information that we put together about that, it would behoove you to review it. Behoove. That's the only big word I've got. It would behoove you to review that and give it some thought. We had some fantastic, courageous parents share their stories at that press conference, and there's also a very good document with our recommendations to the provincial government, so that if you have really detailed questions about where we stand, it's all there. Right?
Deanna's asking whether anyone's figured out the per hour cost of DSO or DFO. We haven't found it out per hour, but I do remember at one point we were looking at sort of the total annual cost per child for DFO versus DSO, and roughly speaking, DSO was double. And I remember lobbying several different ministers with that number, and they went, wait a second, what do you mean it's double? And that was sort of the way that we got the attention of, like, if you really want to move this wait list, you have to pour money into the direct funding stream. But to do that and not introduce regulation is to create this wild west out there, where we're starting to see practices, not from many, but from a couple of private providers that are unethical in sort of different ways than the regional programs are unethical. So the need for regulation is clear. And by the way, we don't have to write a proposal for regulation as the OAC. ONTABA has already done it, and it's already in there, and we presented it to the previous government. So it's there. Darcy, I think you have found the fourth panel.
Thanks,
guys,
Darcy.
There it is. Yes, liberation is there is no fence. Well done. I use that in my classroom all the time when I'm teaching human rights. Thulasi, is there data on families requesting DFO or DSO? Probably, but we don't have access to it. We used to be able to go in for monthly meetings under the previous government, and we were actually tracking the numbers with them as those 8K and 10K payments rolled out, how many people were taking those up, who was in DSO, who was in DFO. We don't have access to that data anymore. We might have to FOI it, file a Freedom of Information request.
And those of you newer to this life and this world, the access that the OAC had with the previous administration was pretty unprecedented.
Well,
at the end,
because we kicked their butt.
Well, and it is. It is because we made a big stink, and they looked really, really bad, and they made some colossally bad decisions that they were working as hard as they could to backpedal and fix those errors. So it's not that's the beauty of being an organization with no affiliations. We speak truth to power, and we were able to get more information from the last administration. These are new relationships that we are really trying to develop.
And it's interesting because, I mean, we have to talk to everybody. So I have, and with members of the executive and some members of the board of directors, we've had meetings with Liberals, New Democrats, and Conservatives in the last 6 months. I mean, I can go through and name them if you want, but we're continuing to talk to everybody about what we want to see. I don't want to get to a position where we stop talking to the Conservatives. I need to keep that door open. some of you are asking about the schools question, and I want to thank you for that, because a big part of what's growing this wait list is the fact that the Ministry of Education has really not stepped up to its obligation to be part of all of this. And the autism pilot projects that involved EA training in applied behavioral analysis, you know, I want to see the data from those, because if you're if you've got a program that is open to kids all the way up to the age of 18, and from the ages just 6 to 18, kids are supposed to be spending 5 hours a day in school. Well, how the hell do you deliver ABA if it's not inside those school hours? So what the implementation committee was working on, and this was a panel of experts who were put together under Minister Coteau, well, initially under Minister, oh dear, what was her name before? McCharles.
Yes, McCharles.
Initially through her and then through Coteau, to give the government advice. I'm not even going there anymore. I hope she is well and healthy.
Me too.
But the implementation committee was there to give advice to the minister on how to redesign the Ontario Autism Program. And as some of you may know, our past president, Bruce McIntosh, was on that committee. They worked for close to 2 years going through, and they studied models about how autism funding works in other jurisdictions, and they gave really good advice to the minister. That committee isn't meeting anymore. And they would have, say, some excellent advice to give on how to design that new program. But I know that a big thing back at the point that committee was meeting was education needs to get to this table. So they were there and they were listening and they were observing, but the difficulty is this can't be a program that is just under what is now the Ministry of Children and Community Social Services. If you're really going to help people with autism across the lifespan, then you have to involve that ministry and education and health, and I would also argue the Ministry of Labor and Housing, if you're really going to address all the issues that apply to adults.
And right now, it's up to parents to figure out how to integrate the services that they are accessing.
Which is luck filling out all the forms.
Not just the forms, but the challenges of getting the wonderful people who do work with your children to connect with each other. They have rules and they have things they can and cannot do. And if we really truly had an integration of services, it would mean that parents could work. It would mean that mothers and fathers could go back to work and not be social workers versus you know, parents.
I know.
And so many things. Maybe I digress a little bit, but I've heard you talk about 2 silos. When it comes to the ministries that we deal with, primarily with the OAC. There are other silos for people with older children, but these are the Ministry of Education and
the Ministry of Children and Community and Social Services, so CCSS.
Right.
I still have to assimilate that acronym. Can I say something just before we go on to the silos conversation? And I don't know how to say this gently, so I'm just going to say it. This is to Caroline, who's been waiting since January 2017, Aaron, who's been waiting for 2 years, Marinder, who's been waiting since September 2016. You're not going to love what I'm about to say. I know what it is to wait. And the idea that our wait lists are measured in years and not months is abhorrent to me. But as bad as things are right now, I look at those wait lists or wait times that you're talking about and think, it actually is a little bit better. Because in my day, and just for perspective, my more severely affected child is 18 now. He waited 4.5 years. So the wait times have been cut by almost half, which is not insignificant. It's also not helpful to point it out. But I feel, and again, going back to this temptation and sometimes deliberate policy moves on the part of the government to divide us, we always have to keep talking to people who are further ahead of us in the journey and who are just coming in. And you need to look up and down the line to get that perspective. And it's so hard because when you're in your own fight, I've definitely gone through a journey, and I want to talk about this a little bit, where, my whole journey into activism was because of our son, and then later our daughter. And it started off, and it was just about him. It was like, I'm going to fight to get my kid what he needs. And it's me, and it's my kid, and it's my family. And then we organized some rallies, and I remember going to a protest and having a mom bring up her daughter afterwards. Her name is Tennyson. And she said, Tennyson, this is Laura. She's fighting for more help for kids like you. I want you to give her a hug. And Tennyson's hug, can't even talk about it without crying, changed my life. Because in that moment, it wasn't about my kid anymore. It was about all of the kids. And it's when you, as a parent, make that jump from just seeing your own family situation to seeing the systemic issues and seeing how everybody is being affected. And then you get to the level of advocacy for others. Now I'm sort of at the next stage for me, where I recognize that there's issues that are in play, not just for people with autism, but for people with other disabilities as well. And so my partnership with people like Sherry Caldwell at the Ontario Disability Coalition, or David Lepofsky at the AODA, has really opened my eyes to how many issues we have in the autism community that are exactly the same for people with other disabilities. So I see you guys talking to each other.
It's wonderful. It's
about your wait times. And I wanted to give you that broader perspective.
Bit of a perspective.
And that Debbie, really, that's a long time. December 2015.
Really hard. And it is really hard when your kid is little and you're weak. Like,
you're so in the
week, a
weeds.
Day feels like an eternity.
Especially when all the research shows that it's most effective on younger brains.
The anxiety, the pain, the weight, the struggle, the confusion, it's really unbearable. It really is.
It is.
And so I think I mentioned this earlier, just because we are saying, yes, we waited too. Laura waited 4.5 years. I waited almost 3 years for Charlie to get service. It was excruciating, and then there were some new disappointments when that came up, and I won't share those. but there were some others that really knocked me off my feet, that I didn't anticipate. I thought that we lived in a generous, kind nation, and then I realized that we do, if you're fortunate enough to have good health and a neurotypical mind and a whole bunch of other things going for you,
privilege.
And those things are a privilege. Okay, so
I need to get my charger.
Oh, okay.
I want to go offline.
Laura's going to charge. We've gone for an hour, and there's just one last thing we want to talk about, but maybe we can quickly scroll through.
Yeah, I'll let you scroll through those comments while I just get my
so
charger.
Bad. Laura is so much better at scrolling through. I apologize. This is not TV, right? We're trying to actually interact with you, and it's just Laura and I in her living room here. Speech and language pathologist. Yeah, I hear you on that one. Okay, I can't even use this laptop. I'm so sorry. Laura's gone to get her charger, and I don't know how to use Macs. I can't scroll up. I could do a dance, an interpretive dance. You don't want to see that, though. Here she comes. Okay, charge. Charge me, baby. Do 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 do. Charge. Okay.
Should have done this at the beginning.
That's quite all right, my love. All right. Am I doing this properly? Yes. Okay. Sorry for the delay. So we'll scroll through very, very quickly, and make sure that there are some questions or see if there are questions we can answer. And if you,
Daniela,
as we are winding down, there's one more thing we want to talk about, which is talking to MPPs. I think it's really important to plug Laura for a little bit of advice, but we'll be quick. Sure. So,
all right. So when the announcement comes, whatever it is, we will gather together as an organization and figure out our response. Speaking only for myself right now, without consulting the membership.
I need more wine.
Without consulting the membership,
Okay.
the executive, the
Go,
board of
Laura.
directors, anybody. I am very tempted to take a hard line and say anything that involves age-based services, anything that involves a flat fee for everybody, regardless of severity, anything that flies in the face of all of the science that's out there about what's effective in the treatment of autism. If it involves that, I can't endorse it, and we will fight. And so I want you guys to brace yourself for another battle. And I need you to hear something personal about this. Our first battle was to fight down an age 6 cutoff. If you've never heard of this, go on the OAC webpage and read the history page, because many of you don't know about the battle that went from about 2005 to 2011. So that was one round.
Yep.
And then I thought we were done. And then 2016 happened, and they introduced the age 5 cutoff, and we went to battle again. I'm battle weary. We're very tired as a family, very drained financially. If we do have to go to battle again, we are going to have to do 3 things really well. One, we are going to have to stand united. We cannot let any government, regardless of political stripe, pit parents against each other. You know, there's a horrible thing that parents do, and whether it's because you have an exceptional child or not, but there's this competitive thing that we do of, oh, my kid sleeps less than your kid. Oh, yeah, well, my kid's more of a picky eater than your kid. Oh, my kid's more severe than your kid.
Yeah.
Oh, my kid does. It's a pointless game. And to try to divide our community and say, well, you should be grateful, you know, you take that amount of funding and you do that, but that's not, we can't be divided. So those of you that may find yourself in the position of saying, Jesus, I'd love to take $6,000 and run. That's okay. You go ahead and take it.
Yeah.
But you bloody well better show up at the protests when it's time to fight for your brothers and sisters that aren't getting what they need, because we are fighting for equity.
I can tell you a very quick story of when I got the, first I got the news of the age 5 cutoff, and that kids were not going to get service. And my kid had just started at this fantastic center. And it was such a relief. I can't even tell you. The kid was making gains lickety-split. It was so exciting. And the level of relief and love and, I mean, you know, it was the best ever, right? And then I heard that all these kids on the waiting list were not going to get service. And I was like, oh, that's really too bad. You know, that's really awful. I knew what it felt like to wait that long and then to have it taken away from you. Wow. And then I got a letter saying, you're out. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It hits you.
My kid? What? You know? And then I thought, oh my God, how selfish was I? Like, of course I cared, but I felt in principle, but I was so relieved, like, oh, at least my boy is safe.
Yeah, and
you know,
we can't go down that road again.
And I learned the hard way, just because I thought my boy was safe.
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
So thing number one is unity. We have to stand together and we have to fight for equity. And now I forgot what the other 2 things
Regulation.
were.
Regulation.
No, that's a policy issue.
It's a policy issue.
But the other thing.
Okay.
We're going to need funding.
Have some water and no wine.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're going to need funding, guys. We've never asked for a membership fee, but it occurred to me today as I looked at the number of people in our Facebook group that we have close to 4,700 people here. If everybody donated $10, holy crap, that would pay for a lot of signs, a lot of photocopying, a lot of travel expenses, meeting expenses. I mean, when we go down to Queen's Park to lobby politicians, I mean, I had a meeting this week and I realized that between transportation for me and the other member of the executive and the dinner that followed and the parking, that meeting cost me $100.
Yep.
I don't have that. And the OAC doesn't have that. So we're going to need, guys, we need a fundraising champion. And then the third thing that we're going to need is a private way to communicate with each other. And so I want to encourage all of you, again, if you haven't already signed up for the OAC membership database, and you do that over on our website. So if you're a Facebook member, that's nice, you're in the club, but you're not really an OAC member until you sign up on the database, because at some point, we may not be able to do these Facebook Lives because we may not be able to share stuff to the general public. Remember, our main page is occupied mostly by parents and by individuals on the spectrum, by service providers and teachers and education assistants, but it's also a place where journalists come for information, and it's also a place where politicians come to look, and I actively, I hope this is okay, but I actively tell politicians, if you want to take the pulse of the autism community, this is the place to do it. But at some point we may need private communication where we can send out an email blast that's only to our members. And so I have to emphasize, I need you guys to go and sign up for that. Only about 500 or 600 of our 4,700 members have done that yet. So get over there to the OAP page and
you
sign
do
up.
not have to make a donation by signing up. We won't turn it away.
No.
Don't get us wrong. We won't turn it away, but you don't need to.
Here.
Okay,
Virginia,
so,
I'll post the link about where you sign up. Just a second.
Great. So the nutshell is that we are about the level of need. Our ask, it's never really about money, it's about need. We cannot circumvent the recommendations of clinicians. We must be very strong with that. Making do, as you all do, as we all do in life, you make do with a budget that you have, is great when you're talking about your personal finances. But when you're talking about the needs of children who are on the autism spectrum, that we have to leave this up to the clinicians, and if the clinician is recommending more service than you are funded for, that's wrong. That's wrong.
Which is why we need a rate card, so that, and we need a system review committee and a whole bunch of
and
other
that
things.
in a nutshell is what the OAC is all about. We are asking about making sure that the needs of individuals on the autism spectrum are being met. It's not about money. It's about need.
So guys, before the announcement is made, there's a couple of things that we want to do, because I'm kind of over being reactive to government policy. I want to be proactive. So I can't go into much detail, but I'm writing something right now that I hope to get published at some point before the announcement is made, in a newspaper or something like that. And then I also want you guys to start contacting your MPP and talking about what we want and what we don't want to see in a new program. And we're sort of doing this up in a list of don'ts and do's. So let me just call up the document.
And if you're watching this after the fact, we're going to go for about 5 more minutes, and then we're all done. So, Laura, while you're bringing this up, I know you can multitask. When you're approaching an MPP, master of all things political, what is the best way to approach a member of Parliament?
So I actually went on the OAC website today and was delighted to, I write documents all the time and then forget about them.
Yeah, I remember this one. It's a really good one.
It's really good. And it's still up there, but it's outdated. But there's a document up there called an MPP lobbying kit. It's dated April 26th, and it's on the resources page of our webpage. So it takes you through exactly how to lobby an MPP. So I guess the first thing that I want to say is you need to contact your member of provincial parliament. Your federal representative here, your municipal representative are of no use to you. Autism funding is under the provincial government.
Which is an MP. 1 P instead of 2.
No, we want the 2 Ps.
I know. Sorry, but yes.
Yes.
We want the two Ps.
We want the two Ps. So I'll post this website about how you find out who your MPP is. I'm guessing that most of our members are politically engaged enough that they know, but just in case, there you go. I'm posting as Karen, by the way. So step one is you find out who your MPP is. Step two is you send an email, or even better, a handwritten letter asking for a meeting, or you call and you ask for a meeting. Understand that when the House is in session, so when question period and debates are happening at Queen's Park, the MPPs all return to their riding on Fridays. So Fridays are the best day to ask for a meeting because they'll be in their constituency, they'll be local, and you can just go to their office close to where you live, as opposed to trying to drive all the way into Toronto and meeting at their Queen's Park office.
Yeah.
So you set up the meeting, find out how long you have, and stick to that timeline. If your MPP says, I can talk to you for 30 minutes, do not plan on going in there and telling them your life story for an hour and a half. You have to respect their time. They're incredibly busy people. And so what I try to do is write out an agenda, kind of like the way I do my lesson plans of like, okay, I'm going to talk about this issue for this long. Of course, I'm going to introduce my kid, right? I'm going to show a picture of my kid and take 5 minutes to say, this is my kid's story. And then I'm going to identify the problem. And then I'm going to say what solutions would work. And then I'm going to ask them to do a specific thing. So will you support this law? Will you enter this petition for me? Will you talk to your leader? And I think really what we're going to be asking people to do is talk to their leader about what we want and what we don't want to see in a new OAP. And so I'll read these out to you, and I'll share them as soon as I can get this public. But the three big things are, number one, do not take us back to a system of age-based funding. I think the Conservatives have that message. They saw what we did to the Liberals when they did age cutoffs, not once, but twice. Number two, don't allow a system where everyone in the OAP receives the same flat rate. The system in BC, by the way, has come under huge fire in a couple of publications this week, and I'll be posting those up. You could hand those to your MPP as a way of saying, you know, why don't you take this to Lisa MacLeod? Why don't you take this to Premier Ford, to show them that if that's the model that we're thinking of, and again, it's rumor, they might be looking at Alberta, they might be looking at New Zealand, I don't know. But to say to them, please don't do that. And then number three is, don't ignore the capacity issue. If you want to reduce the wait list, we need more BCBAs in this province. We need more ABA therapists, and we need more psychologists with expertise in supervising autism programs. So a really good, easy, feel-good announcement that they could make would be free tuition for people who want to get their BCBA or something like that. On the do category,
let me just ask you a question. So I remember this very clearly. That when we had the last fight, literally dozens, if not hundreds of mothers and fathers visited their MPPs. It was an incredibly successful campaign. And we won because of the hard work of the individuals who took the time to see their MPPs and tell their stories. Upon the first meeting across the board, we got the same response from all of the MPPs. No. Okay, so tell me. That was my impression.
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, usually when you go in and you ask for something, the first response is no.
Yes, of course. First response is no.
Then you ask for a second meeting.
But it was kind of like a company line, for lack of a way of putting it, that they gave us, right?
Well, what most MPPs will have is some notes that have been sent out by the different ministries on the hot issues. And so they'll have a little binder with talking points that will say, hey, if a constituent comes in talking about the closure of the GM plant in Oshawa, here's our key talking points. On autism, here's our key talking points. So at the first meeting, you can expect to get mostly the talking points. What we've been able to do really effectively is once we know what the talking points are, we prepare our rebuttals to those. In one case, we actually got some talking points leaked to us, and that made our job really easy. And we were able to go in quite aggressively and say, it's actually not like that. It's like this, and you need to do that.
And as a result of that work, when people were prepared and they could offer a rebuttal, it was quite shocking how these MPPs regardless of party, we're human beings.
Yeah.
And they didn't
That's
quite know
important.
what to do with us.
They'd never seen anything quite like us.
No, they really didn't.
Yeah.
We were people who were talking from the heart, and we were people who something clearly wrong had happened.
Yeah.
And it takes a while when you're talking to someone who's had no exposure to another person on the autism spectrum, much less raising a child on the autism spectrum. A lot of education has to go into those meetings.
Yeah. Well, and part of what we're doing is we're telling MPPs that there is a disconnect between what you're reading in your talking points and what your leader and your minister is saying and what's really happening on the ground. Because, and often, I mean, this happens to every party, right? Once you're in power, when you win an election, you tend to think that you deserved to win that election. And you tend to think that, therefore, you don't really need to listen to anybody anymore, and you can just do your own thing. And I've worked in minister's office. Once you get up to that level and you're in cabinet, you start to read your own press releases.
I didn't mention that when I introduced you. You also were an political insider at one time.
Yeah.
She worked for a minister.
I worked for a federal cabinet minister and wrote speeches and did all that kind of stuff. So, you know, once you're in that bubble, you start believing your own stuff, and you stop. And like, this is a huge problem in our political system generally, right? We don't listen to people outside our own filter bubble. Yeah. And what we were doing by talking to the MPPs was by saying to them, no, what they're telling you is wrong. Because so often in public policy, there's the good intentions up at the ministry level, and then there's what happens on the ground. And what we've been able to leverage really well is going in and talking to politicians going, no, actually, it's not working the way they're telling you it's working. And here's my story, and here's proof of that. And then what's really powerful and never seen is that those MPPs then go back to meetings. Now, there's two levels of powerful meetings when you're in government. There's the meeting of all elected members of a party, which has a really funny word that my grade 10 civics kids laugh at all the time. It's called a caucus meeting. Yeah, it takes me 5 minutes to settle them down after I use that word. So a caucus meeting is behind closed doors, and MPPs can speak their mind. And so an MPP can stand up and say, hey, Premier, how come I've got 16 autism parents banging down my door telling me that this program isn't working? And we did that to the Liberals. And then the second meeting is higher, and that's just the cabinet members. And if you can get people at the cabinet table to start saying, actually, this isn't going as planned, then you're really leveraging it. So what I want to do is recreate the MPP lobbying toolkit that we had in 2016. And I'm going to need some help with that, maybe from some writers. Once we have the announcement and we know what it is, we'll be ready to hit the ground with our talking points to say, this is what's good of what you've announced, but this is what is so not okay.
So you quickly mentioned the three don'ts. So the three do's.
The three
and
do's.
Then we're going to wind down, guys.
Because we have to. So we want the government to establish a rate card.
What the heck is a rate card?
So it's like a list for like doctors and people that say, if you do an eye exam, you can charge this amount. If you do this, so if you're doing an hour of ABA therapy, you can charge this amount. Supervision, you can charge this amount. An assessment, you can charge that amount.
So it's transparent?
So it's transparent, and so providers are held accountable for the service plans and the budgets that they submit.
What is this you speak of?
I know. Isn't it crazy?
You think that would already exist?
It does in the States.
Oh.
Everywhere in the States, they have rate cards. Anyway, just saying. It's a thing we could do. Ask number two. I know. Well, I'm only getting started. Wait till you hear ask number two.
Okay, ask number two.
Provide meaningful ABA training and BCBA support for education assistance in schools.
In schools?
Yeah.
Where children are?
Where children spend 5 hours a day.
The best part of their day?
Yeah. I know.
Crazy.
I know.
Okay. Third ask.
Ask number three, regulate practitioners of behavioral science.
Wait a minute.
Establish a college. Have a complaint mechanism that if your kid goes into their room to do therapy and something bad happens, there's a place you can go to complain.
You are crazy.
I know. I know.
You are nuts. Dreamers. That's what the OAC is. A
You
bunch
may say,
of frickin' dreamers.
I'm a dreamer,
but I'm not the only one.
I hope
Okay.
someday you'll join us. Okay, we need to.
Okay.
So much.
So that's it. This was pretty dry. We know it was a lot of information.
I think we put in enough silly.
Yeah, we put in enough silly, and we wish we had more to tell you. We hope that if you're new, you feel a little bit better informed as to what we are and who we are and what we do, and who this amazing woman is who's been our leader for the last little while. Good night, good luck, and we're not going anywhere, but we got to wait and see.
We do, but there are other things happening behind the scenes in the next couple of weeks, and if I can tell you more about those things, well, like I said, I told you I'm writing something, and we have a meeting with Lisa McLeod's Chief of Staff.
Yeah.
And there are other organizations who are also doing other things. So we're not going to just sit around and wait for an announcement to come out. And I don't want you guys to sit around and wait either. I want you calling your MPPs, tweeting at your MPPs, and I'll put those 3 don'ts and 3 do's up in the group, and use those in your messaging.
Yep.
All right?
Let's help them not make bad decisions.
Yeah.
You know, we turned things around before. Maybe we can head them off at the pass.
I think so. We're pretty good at what we do.
You know?
But only because of all of the amazing people
That's right.
that stand beside us.
All you amazing mothers.
I see all the lovely thank yous coming in, and it's lovely. But please understand this whole organization runs on volunteer power.
Yeah.
And we can't and we never have done it without you guys.
Yep.
So keep
it is
being
true.
Awesome.
Laura's been brave enough to stick her face out there and her name and stand up, and we stand behind her. There are so many incredible parents who are working really hard behind the scenes that you don't know their names, but we do, and we're a really effective team. We see you. We know who you are. Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Peace.
Go have a glass of wine.
Good luck. Wait, cleansing breath.
Or tea.
Or tea. Namaste.
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 Peace.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're signing
Good night.
off now. Bye, guys. All right.